I am Mr. Obsidian. Prepare yourself for the Man of Black.
Today we discuss one of my favorites in the conspiracy theory community, the Illuminati card game by Steve Jackson Games. The Illuminati card game is a card game made by Steve Jackson Games, inspired by the 1975 book The Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea. The Illuminati New World Order collectible card game was released in 1994. The limited edition Assassins, the game's first expansion set, was released in mid-1995 and sold in 8-card booster packs. The 100-card expansion set, Sub-Genius, was planned for release in August 1997 and ultimately released in April 1998. The Bavarian Fire Drill set was planned for release in November 1998. The game has ominous secret societies competing with each other to control the world through various means, including legal, illegal, and even mystical. It was designed as a tongue-in-cheek rather than serious take-on conspiracy theories. It contains groups named similarly to real-world organizations, such as the Society for Creative Anachronism and the Symbionese Liberation Army. The United Federated Forces of the Symbionese Liberation Army, commonly referred to simply as the SLA, was a small American militant far-left organization active between 1973 and 1975. It claimed to be a vanguard movement. The left in politics generally refers to individuals and groups who are often associated with progressive values and advocate for government intervention to regulate the economy and protect social welfare. Left-wing politics often promotes social change and reform, supporting issues like LGBTQ+ rights, environmental protection, and racial equality. The left generally believes in government intervention in the economy to regulate markets, provide social safety nets, and redistribute wealth. A form of socialism that advocates for achieving socialist goals through democratic means, rather than revolution. The spectrum of left-wing politics ranges from center-left to far-left or ultra-left. The term center-left describes a position within the political mainstream that accepts capitalism and a market economy. The terms far-left and ultra-left are used for positions that are more radical, more strongly rejecting capitalism and mainstream representative democracy, instead advocating for a socialist society based on economic democracy and direct democracy, representing economic, political, and social democracy. The center-left includes social democrats, social liberals, progressives, and greens. Center-left supporters accept market allocation of resources in a mixed economy with an empowered public sector and a thriving private sector. Center-left policies tend to favor limited state intervention in matters pertaining to the public interest. In several countries, the terms far-left and radical left have been associated with many varieties of anarchism, autonomism, and communism. However, in America, in this instance, otherwise known as the United States landmass, Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution establishes the Guarantee Clause, which ensures that every state in the Union maintains a republican form of government. Therefore, democracy is treason, because the United States shall guarantee to every state in this Union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion, and on application of the legislature or of the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence. In the Federalist No. 39, James Madison emphasizes popular sovereignty and majoritarian control as among the distinctive characters of the Republican form. James Madison, quote, "We may define a republic to be, or at least may bestow that name on, a government which derives all its powers directly or indirectly from the great body of the people, and is administered by persons holding their offices during pleasure for a limited period or during good behavior. It is essential to such a government that it such a government that the persons administering it be appointed either directly or indirectly by the people, and that they hold their appointments by either of the tenures just specified. End quote. The 1874 case of Minor versus Happersett represents a rare instance of the Supreme Court directly deciding a guarantee clause issue. In Minor, the court addressed whether Missouri's denial of the right to vote to women complied with the Constitution. The court stated that the guarantee clause leaves room for states to structure their governments in various ways, yet remain Republican, relying on historical practice as dispositive of the matter. The court held that the guarantee clause did not require women's suffrage because at the time of ratification, women were excluded from suffrage in nearly all the states, with the franchise only bestowed upon men and not upon all of them. Later held in Forsyth versus City of Hammond that the guarantee clause did not prevent a state from determining municipal boundaries through its courts instead of the state legislature. In other cases, the court found occasions to opine on the nature of a republican government guaranteed by the clause in dicta. For example, in Reduncan observes, by the Constitution, a republican form of government is guaranteed to every state in the Union, and the distinguishing feature of that form is the right of the people to choose their own officers for governmental administration, pass their own laws in virtue of the legislative power reposed in representative bodies, whose legitimate acts may be said to be those of the people themselves. Similarly, in the Supreme Court case, United States versus Crawshank, while adopting a narrow construction of the rights secured by the 14th Amendment's Privileges or Immunities Clause, stated that a republican form of government includes a right on the part of its citizens to meet peaceably for consultation in respect to public affairs and to petition for a redress of grievances, as well as the equality of the rights of citizens. 5 U.S.C. Section 7311 prohibits individuals from holding a position in the federal government or the District of Columbia if they participate in a strike, assert the right to strike, or are a member of an organization that advocates for strikes against the constitutional government. Specifically, it applies to any organization of government employees that the individual knows asserts the right to strike. An individual may not accept or hold a position in the government of the United States, state jurisdiction, or the government of the District of Columbia, federal jurisdiction, if he advocates the overthrow of our constitutional form of government, or is a member of an organization that he knows advocates the overthrow of our constitutional form of government, or participates in a strike, or asserts the right to strike against the government of the United States, or the government of the District of Columbia, or is a member of an organization of employees of the government of the United States, or of individuals employed by the government of the District of Columbia, that he knows asserts the right to strike against the government of the United States, or the government of the District of Columbia. An individual except the President, elected or appointed to an office of honor or profit in the civil service or uniformed services shall take the following oath. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith consequences for violating them, including removal from office or other penalties. Examples of violations can include abuse of power, misuse of public funds, perjury, or interfering with investigations. The oath of office is legally binding. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution states that officials, including members of Congress, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. If an official knowingly makes a false statement in the oath, it can be considered perjury, punishable by imprisonment. Additionally, advocating for the overthrow of the government after taking the oath is a felony. The oath serves as a pledge of allegiance and commitment to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the nation. Federal criminal law is explicit and direct regarding a violation of the oath of office by federal officials, which includes all members of Congress. The law requires the removal of the office holder, as well as a prison term or fine for the offender. 18 U.S.C. Section 1918. Disloyalty and asserting the right to strike against the government. Whoever violates the provision of Section 7311 of Title V, that an individual may not accept or hold a position in the government of the United States or the government of the District of Columbia if he advocates the overthrow of our constitutional form of government, or is a member of an organization that he knows advocates the overthrow of our constitutional form of government, or participates in a strike, or asserts the right to strike against the government of the United States or the government of the District of Columbia, or is a member of an organization of employees of the government of the United States, state, or of individuals employed by the government of the District of Columbia, federal, that he knows asserts the right to strike against the government of the United States or the government of the District of Columbia shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year and a day, or both. The FBI and wider American law enforcement consider the SLA to be the first terrorist organization to rise from the American left. 6 members died in a May 1974 shootout with police in Los Angeles. The 3 surviving fugitives recruited new members, but nearly all of them were apprehended in 1975 and prosecuted. Therefore, democracy is treason in any of the several states and the federal jurisdiction. The ideologies of the Symbionese Liberation Army include feminism, anti-capitalism, New Left vanguardism, anti-fascism, and socialism. Death to the fascist insect that preys upon the life of the people, slogan of the Symbionese Liberation Army. In 1974, a little-known but wealthy Berkeley undergraduate, Patricia Hearst, became a media celebrity after being kidnapped by a group of revolutionaries, calling themselves the Symbionese Liberation Army. The kidnapped victim transformed into a seemingly willing accomplice. Over the months of her kidnapping, she participated in crimes, claimed allegiance to the SLA, and defended her captors as valiant heroes. From tape recordings, her trial testimony, and own telling of the story years later, several different versions of events emerge, but there seems to be no resolution to the questions about her transformation. Her parents thought that she had been brainwashed. Experts suggested that she was a victim of the Stockholm Syndrome, mistakenly identifying with her captors in an effort at self-preservation. Yet it is also possible that Hearst repudiated her upbringing to flirt with radical terrorism. The Revolutionary Symbionese Liberation Army formed in Berkeley, California, just months before the kidnapping. Berkeley had long been America's center of radical militarism. By the early 70s, after years of protest and resistance, some fringes of the left were developing a sense of urgency. In the ever-present debate between non-violent and violent actions, the idea of terrorism was gaining ground. The SLA grew out of a black inmate organization, the Black Cultural Association, active in California's Vacaville prison in the late 60s and early 70s. Coordinated by a University of California, Berkeley professor, the and William Wolfe, to the prison to tutor prisoners in political science, black sociology, and African heritage. Begun as an inmate self-help group, over time the BCA became more political, largely focused on black nationalism. One black Bakerville prisoner, Donald DeFreeze, who was serving a sentence for armed robbery, formed a splitter group, Unisite, that became the basis for the SLA Future. SLA members Angela Atwood and Nancy Ling Perry also visited Bakerville to meet with radical prison groups. In the eyes of the young radicals, the black prisoners, no matter what their crime, took on heroic proportions as political prisoners, oppressed by a racist and corrupt American society. In March 1973, DeFreeze escaped from prison and headed to his friends in Berkeley. With the help of Little and Wolfe, he found shelter with two young white women, Nancy Ling Perry and Patricia Soltysek. In the meantime, a young couple, Bill and Emily Harris, had arrived in Berkeley with their friends Gary and Angela Atwood from Bloomington, Indiana. The Harrises and Angela Atwood soon joined radical groups and connected with DeFreeze and the others. By the end of the summer, fiercely opposed to what they viewed as an oppressive racist society, the radicals formed the Symbionese Liberation Army. Their militant, loosely Marxist priorities included ending racism, monogamy, the prison system, and all other institutions that have made and sustained capitalism. DeFreeze took the name General Field Marshal Chingwe and became the group's leader. Their black nationalist program included creating a system of homelands within the U.S. for minority groups. Armed with stolen weapons and funded by robberies, the group trained in military maneuvers in the Berkeley Hills. In a similar capacity, the Society for Creative Anachronism is an international living history group with the aim of studying and recreating mainly medieval European cultures and their histories before the 17th century. A quip often used within the SCA describes it as a group devoted to the Middle Ages, as they ought to have been, choosing to selectively recreate the culture, choosing elements of the culture that interest and attract us. Founded in 1966, the non-profit educational corporation has over 20,000 paid members as of 2020, with about 60,000 total participants in the society, including members and non-member participants. In 2012, the SCA agreed to pay $1.3 million to settle a lawsuit brought on behalf of 11 victims of explicit child abuse. The abuse was committed in Pennsylvania at the private residence of Ben Schrager, who pleaded guilty to criminal charges in 2004. Schrager was a member of the SCA at the time of the abuse. His membership was suspended on his arrest and permanently revoked after his plea. The lawsuit contended that the SCA had not conducted a background check on Schrager, though at the time the organization did not perform background checks in general, and there is no legal requirement to do so. In 2018, Peter Barclay died after being impaled by a lance during equestrian activities at an SCA event. Barclay was an experienced equestrian, and his death was deemed an accident. The SCA is incorporated as a 501c3 non-profit corporation in California, with its current headquarters in the city of Milpitas, California. It is headed by a board of directors, each of whom is nominated by the membership of the SCA, selected by sitting directors and elected to serve for 3.5 years. Each director serves as an ombudsman for various kingdoms and society officers, not to be confused with, in the legal sense, ombudsmen, which are government employees who investigate and try to resolve complaints, usually through recommendations, binding or not, or mediation. They are usually appointed by the government or by Parliament, often with a significant degree of independence. Ombudsmen also aim to identify systemic issues leading to poor service or breaches of people's rights. At the national level, most ombudsmen sector, for example, contracted service providers. In some cases, there is a more restricted mandate to a certain sector of society. More recent developments have included the creation of specialized children's ombudsmen, a children's ombudsman, children's commissioner, youth commissioner, child advocate, children's commission, youth ombudsman, or equivalent body, is a public authority in various countries charged with the protection and promotion of the rights of children and young people, either in society at large or in specific categories such as children in contact with the care system. The agencies usually have a substantial degree of independence from the executive. The term is often used differently from the original meaning of ombudsman. It is often an umbrella term, often used as a translation convention. The term is often not used even in countries that do have ombudsmen in other positions, or national human rights institutions dealing with individual complaints, intervening with other public authorities, conducting research, and where their mandate permits them to engage in advocacy, generally promoting children's rights in public policy, law, and practice. The first Children's Commissioner was established in Norway in 1981. The creation of such institutions has been promoted by the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child, and from 1990 onwards, by the Council of Europe. This may seem like an honorable position, however I assure you it is not, as today's ombudsmen actually have a propensity to do the opposite and interfere in parents' rights, as the International Declaration of the Rights of the Child is a UN-backed policy that allows international entities, corporations or otherwise, to interfere worldwide in parental rights as a sneaky maneuver for the UN to provide for legal manipulation to interfere in the private realm of family life. In general, an ombudsman is a state official appointed to provide a check on government activity in the interests of the citizen, and to oversee the investigation of complaints of improper government activity against the citizen. If the ombudsman finds a complaint to be substantiated, the problem may get rectified, or an ombudsman report is published making recommendations for change. Further redress depends on the laws of the country concerned, but this typically involves financial compensation. Ombudsmen in most countries do not have the power to initiate legal proceedings or prosecution on the grounds of a complaint. This role is sometimes referred to as a tribunician role and has been traditionally fulfilled by elected representatives. The term refers to the ancient Roman tribunes of the plebeians, tribuni plebis, whose role was to intercede in the political process on behalf of common citizens. The International Ombudsman Institute I01, representing 150 public sector, independent ombudsmen, institutions on the national, state, regional, and local level around the globe. This means that the ombudsman does all of its actions under color of law, both federal and state. The supposed significant advantage of an ombudsman is that they examine complaints from outside the offending state institution, thus avoiding the conflicts of interest inherent in self-policing. However, the ombudsman system relies heavily on the selection of an appropriate individual for the office, and on the cooperation of at least some effective official from within the apparatus of the state. However, sociologist Jürgen Bayer has criticized the institution, stating, "Ombudsmen are relics of absolutism, designed to iron out the worst excesses of administrative arbitrariness while keeping the power structures intact." The Committee on the Rights of the Child, CRC, is a body of experts that monitor and report on the implementation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, commonly abbreviated as the CRC or UNCRC, is an international human rights treaty which sets out the civil, political, economic, social, health, and cultural rights of children. It is signed but not ratified in the United States, meaning of no full force and effect. The convention defines a child as any human being under the age of 18, unless the age of majority is attained earlier under national legislation. Every other country in the world is signed and ratified into the system designed for international child trafficking on the back end. Nations that have ratified this convention or have acceded to it are bound by international law. When a state has signed the treaty but not ratified it, it is not yet bound by the treaty's provisions, but is already obliged to not act contrary to its purpose. The UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, composed of 18 independent experts, is responsible for supervising the implementation of the convention by the states that have ratified it. Their governments are required to report to and appear before the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, periodically to be examined on their progress regarding the advancement of the implementation of the convention and the status of child rights in their country. The UN General Assembly adopted the convention and opened it for signature on the 20th of November 1989, the 30th anniversary of its Declaration of the Rights of the Child. It came into force on the 2nd of September 1990, after it was ratified by the required number of nations. As of the 25th of May 2025, 196 countries are party to it, including every member of the United Nations except the United States. The convention deals with child-specific needs and rights. It requires that the nations that ratify this convention are bound to it by international law. Ratifying states must act in the best interests of the child. The convention obliges states to allow parents to exercise their parental responsibilities. The convention also acknowledges that children have the right to express their opinions and to have those opinions heard and acted upon when appropriate, to be protected from abuse or exploitation, and to have their privacy protected. It requires that their lives not be subject to excessive interference. The convention also obliges signatory states to separate legal representation for a child in any judicial dispute concerning their care, and asks that the child's viewpoint be heard in such cases. Article 19 of the convention states that state parties must take all appropriate legislative, administrative, social, and educational measures to protect the child from all forms of physical or mental violence, which in the United States is a violation of the separation of powers doctrine. Global human rights standards were challenged at the World Conference on Human Rights in Vienna, 1993, when a number of governments, prominently China, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Iran, raised serious objections to the idea of universal human rights. Every member of the United Nations except the United States has either ratified or accepted the rights articulated for the child under 18 or below the age of majority in that state. The most recent ratifications of the convention were by Cook Islands, Niue, the state of Palestine, and the Holy See. The Holy See, Latin Sancta Sedes, Holy Chair, ecclesiastical Latin pronunciation, Sancta Sedes, Italian, Santa Sede, Santa Sede, also called the See of Rome, the Petrine See or the Apostolic See, is the central governing body of the Catholic Church in Vatican City. It encompasses the office of the Pope as the Bishop of the Apostolic Episcopal See of Rome, and serves as the spiritual and administrative authority of the worldwide Catholic Church and Vatican City. Under international law, the Holy See holds the status of a sovereign juridical entity. In February 2014, the committee, after interviewing two top officials of the Catholic Church, published observations described as a scathing indictment of the Vatican's handling of child sexual abuse cases involving clerics, releasing a report that included criticism of church teachings on homosexuality, gender equality, and abortion. The Holy See released a critical statement and said that it did not appreciate being asked to change its position on issues it considered immutable. Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, the Holy See's quality care and advocate for legislative and systemic changes. As of 2005, including national and subnational levels, a total of 129 offices of OEM Budsmen have been established around the world. In some countries, an inspector general, citizen advocate, or other official may have duties similar to those of a national ombudsman and may also be appointed by a legislature. Below the national level, an ombudsman may be appointed by a state, local, or municipal government. Unofficial ombudsmen may be appointed by or even work for a corporation such as a utility supplier, newspaper, NGO, or professional regulatory body. Looking back to the card game, Jolly Fleech. In September 1981, Steve Jackson and his regular freelance cover artist, Dave Martin, discussed their shared admiration of Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson's Illuminatus trilogy. The latter suggested a game. Steve Jackson decided against adapting the novel because of the expense of game rights and the difficulty of adapting a novel with such a convoluted plot. He decided a game about the secret conspiracy idea behind Illuminatus was viable. After researching the Illuminati and conspiracy theories and extensive and enthusiastic playtesting, it went on the market in July 1982 in the, at the time, usual SJG pocket box format. Co-author Shea provided a 4-paragraph introduction to the rulebook for the Illuminati expansion set 1, 1983, in which she wrote, "Maybe the Illuminati are behind this game. They must be, they are, by definition, behind everything. The game is played with a deck of special cards, money chips, representing millions of dollars in low-denomination unmarked banknotes, and 2 6-sided dice. The players take the role of Illuminati societies that struggle to take over the world. The pocket box edition depicted 6 Illuminati groups: the Bavarian Illuminati, the Discordian Society, the UFOs, the Servants of Cthulhu, the Bermuda Triangle, and the Gnomes of Zurich. The deluxe edition added the Society of Assassins and the Network, and the Illuminati Y2K expansion added the Church of the Subgenius and Shangri-La. The aim of the game is fulfilled when Illuminati build a power structure consisting of given number of cards, dependent on number of players, or when Illuminati fulfill its special goal, such as controlling at least 1 card of each alignment for the Bermuda Triangle. The game is played in turns. The primary Illuminati player activity is taking control of groups. Other types of attacks are attacks to neutralize, removing from Illuminati power structure and returning to the table, otherwise known as the world, and attack to destroy, removing from the game. Besides attacking groups, the players can trade, form alliances, and many other activities. Tactics such as playing opponents off each other, backstabbing, and concealing your true motives are encouraged in this game. In one variant of the game, players are allowed to cheat, steal money from the table, and do anything it takes to win. Following the release and popularity of Magic the Gathering, in August 1993, Steve Jackson Games began the development of Illuminati New World Order, most of which occurred in early 1994. In an article published in the November-December 1994 issue of Pyramid magazine, Steve Jackson stated that Wizards of the Coast had loaned Steve Jackson Games money to finance the first printing of INWO, which was the biggest project the company had undertaken by an order of magnitude. Players attempt to achieve world domination by utilizing the powers of their chosen Illuminati: the Adepts of Hermes, the Bavarian Illuminati, the Bermuda Triangle, the Discordian Society, the Gnomes of Zurich, the Network, Servants of Cthulhu, Shangri-La, the UFOs, the Society of Assassins, added in the Assassins expansion, and the Church of the Subgenius, added in the Subgenius expansion. The first player to control a predetermined number of organizations, usually 12 in a standard game, has achieved the basic goal and can claim victory. Controllable organizations include groups such as the Men in Black, otherwise known as Majestic 12, the CIA, and the Boy Scouts. Personalities such as Princess Diana, Princess of Wales, Saddam Hussein, Ross Perot, or Bjorn, a parody of Barney the Dinosaur, and places like Japan, California, Canada, and the Moon Base. Many organization names are spoofs of real organizations presumably altered to avoid lawsuits. Other ways to achieve victory include destroying rival Illuminati by capturing or killing the last organization in their power structure, or fulfilling a particular goal before your opponent can. Each Illuminati card represents a different Illuminati organization at the center of each player's power structure. They have power, a special goal, and an appropriate special ability. Their power flows outward into the groups they control via control arrows. Plot cards provide the bulk of the game's narrative structure, allowing players to go beyond or even break the game's rules, as described in the World Domination Handbook. Included among the general plots are several particular types, including assassinations and disasters, for delivering insults to the various personalities and places in play. Goal, special goals that can lead to surprise victories, and New World Order cards, a set of conditions that affect all players, typically overridden when replacement New World Order cards are brought into play. Organizations are identified by their red color scheme, border, and/or title. There are three main types of organizations: regular organizations, people, and places. They all feature power, resistance, special abilities, alignment attributes, and control arrows, an inward arrow and 0-3 outward arrows. Like their Illuminati masters, organizations can launch and defend against various attacks. Provided that the attacking organization has a free outward pointing control arrow, players can increase the size of their power structure via successful attacks to control, a mathematically determined method employed whenever a player wants to capture an organization from their hand, or a rival player's power structure. Unless the attack is privileged, only the target and attacker can be involved. All players can aid or undermine the attack. Attacks to destroy follow a similar game mechanic, but result in the organization's removal from the power structure, after which they are immediately discarded. A dice roll determines the outcome of all attacks. Other ways to introduce organizations to the power structure involve plots, spending action tokens to bring groups into play, or using free moves at appropriate times during the play cycle. Resources represent the custodians of a variety of objects, ranging from gadgets to artifacts, such as the Shroud of Turin, flying saucers, and Eliza. Eliza is an early natural language processing computer program developed from 1964 to 1967 at MIT by Joseph Weizenbaum. Joseph Weizenbaum, the 8th of January 1923, the 5th of March 2008, was a German-American computer scientist and a professor at MIT. The Weizenbaum Award and the Weizenbaum Institute are named after him. He started to think philosophically about the implications of artificial intelligence and later became one of its leading critics. In an interview with MIT, Weizenbaum elaborated on his fears, expanding them beyond the realm of mere artificial intelligence, explaining that his fears for society and the future of society were largely because of the computer itself. His belief was that the computer, at its most base level, is a fundamentally conservative force, and that despite being a technological innovation, it would end up hindering social progress. As such, although the computer allowed the industry to become more efficient, it prevented a fundamental rehaul of the system. Weizenbaum also worried about the negative effects computers would have with regards to the military, calling the computer a child of the military. Created to explore communication between humans and machines, Eliza simulated conversation by using a pattern matching and substitution methodology that gave users an illusion of understanding on the part of the program, but had no answer questions correctly, only on how closely its answers resembled those of a human. Since the Turing test is a test of indistinguishability in performance capacity, the verbal version generalizes naturally to all of human performance capacity, verbal as well as non-verbal. Robotic. Weizenbaum used his experience working with Bank of America as justification for his reasoning, saying that the computer allowed banks to deal with an ever-expanding number of checks in play that otherwise would have forced drastic changes to banking organizations such as decentralization. The Bank of America Corporation, Bank of America, often abbreviated BOFA or BOA, is an American multinational investment bank and financial services holding company headquartered at the Bank of America Corporate Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, with investment banking and auxiliary headquarters in Manhattan. The bank was founded by the merger of Nations Bank and Bank of America in 1998. It is the second largest banking institution in the United States and the second largest bank in the world by market capitalization, both after JP Morgan Chase. Bank of America is one of the big four banking institutions of the United States. JP Morgan Chase Co. is an American multinational finance corporation headquartered in New York City and incorporated in Delaware. It is the largest bank in the United States and the world's largest bank by market capitalization as of 2024. JP Morgan will be showing up often in future videos, not unlike Lockheed Martin or BlackRock, in several real-world conspiracies and conspiracy theories as well. A number of organizations and people are referenced by involvement multiple times. These organizations play a role in multiple conspiracies and theories, leading some to speculate that there is a connection. I am one of those speculators. One reference might be a hoax, two references might be a coincidence, but multiple references across different conspiracies or theories, that is when the line between coincidence and truth becomes paper thin. The game has attained cult status in some circles, been referenced in such geek media, like user-friendly comic strip. It is also mentioned in Dan Brown's novel Angels Demons, which concerns an apparent attack by the revived Illuminati. The game is inaccurately referred to as an online computer game, but references to Steve Jackson make clear that this is the product referred to. I have a feeling you guys are in for a real tree on this channel in the future when it comes to this current family court situation and this collectible card game. This has been a very interesting video. The Illuminati card game altogether in the coming videos will reveal many conspiracies, both real and theory, to investigate. In the end, you have to ask yourself, did they plan it all? Was this card game simply a card game, or were there people who knew things that other people didn't want you to know? Did Steve Jackson know about the events of 9/11s before they happened? Did the card game predict world events? Did the card game expose hidden organizations and conspiracies in real life? Was the Illuminati card game made by the Illuminati? Find out in this one and more upcoming videos. And with that, I'll be on my way. Stay safe, stay happy, and hold on to your children. It's a mad, mad world out there. If you enjoy this content and would like some more, please subscribe. It helps the channel. If you want to help us break into the algorithm and expose the evil, hit that like button. Unfortunately, due to trolls and those who would have negative commentary in the comment section, it is disabled from my videos until further notice. I do apologize for any inconvenience that this causes. I post multiple videos a week. This channel is not monetized, nor do I ask for any money. All I ask is that you spread the word and stick to your constitution. That's all the farewells for now. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and with that,
I bid you adieu. I am Mr. Obsidian. Prepare yourself for the Man of Black.